It is worth more, gram for gram, than gold. It takes over 150,000 flowers, hand-picked in the dark before sunrise, to produce a single pound of it. No machine on earth can harvest it. No shortcut has ever been found. For 4,000 years, it has been smuggled across deserts, hoarded by emperors, and used to color the robes of the wealthy and the shrouds of the dead. Men have been executed for adulterating it. Entire wars have been fought, in part, over control of it. And yet, it comes from a flower so fragile that it lives for exactly one day. This is the story of saffron, the blood-red thread that built empires, painted history the color of gold, and remains, even now, the most expensive spice on earth. To understand why, we have to go back before Rome, before Persia, before the pyramids were finished, to a strange purple flower blooming in the rocky soil of the eastern Mediterranean. Because someone, somewhere, looked at that flower and decided it was worth more than almost anything else in the ancient world. The question is, why? To understand saffron, you first need to understand just how strange the plant actually is. Saffron comes from Crocus sativus, a small purple crocus with 3 delicate crimson threads reaching up from its center. Those 3 threads are the stigma of the flower, the female part responsible for catching pollen. And those threads, dried and cured, are saffron. Here's the first strange fact. The saffron crocus cannot reproduce on its own. At some point in its evolutionary history, it lost the ability to produce viable seeds. It is what botanists call a sterile triploid, meaning every single saffron crocus in the world today is a clone, propagated not through pollination, but through bulbs, dug up and replanted by human hands, generation after generation, for thousands of years. Think about what that means. Every saffron thread that has ever touched your food, in a paella in Spain, a biryani in India, a risotto in Milan, came from a plant that depends entirely on human beings to survive. It cannot spread on the wind. It cannot be carried by birds. Without someone, somewhere, digging up its bulbs and replanting them by hand, the species would vanish within a few short years. Saffron didn't just get discovered by humanity. In a very real sense, saffron and humanity have been locked in partnership since the beginning. One of the strangest and most enduring cases of a plant that survives only because we chose to keep it alive. So where did this strange partnership begin? Most botanists now believe Crocus sativus originated as a mutation of a wild species, Crocus cartwrightianus, somewhere in Bronze Age Greece or Crete. And we don't have to guess about this, because the ancient world left us a picture, a literal picture. On the walls of a Bronze Age palace on the island of Santorini, a site called Akrotiri, buried and perfectly preserved by a volcanic eruption more than 3,500 years ago, archaeologists uncovered frescoes showing women harvesting saffron crocuses, and even a young monkey helping gather the flowers for a goddess. This means that saffron cultivation is not just ancient, it's Bronze Age ancient. It was already a valuable, ritualized, image-worthy practice before most of the civilizations we consider ancient had even been founded. But here's the twist. At Akrotiri, saffron wasn't just a spice, it was medicine. Long before anyone used saffron to color a dish of rice, ancient physicians were using it to treat the human body. Egyptian medical texts describe saffron-based remedies. Cleopatra, according to long-standing historical tradition, is said to have used saffron in her baths, believing it enhanced the effects of intimate encounters. Persian royalty wove saffron threads into their ceremonial carpets and blended it into their food, not just for flavor, but for its rumored ability to elevate mood. And this wasn't superstition without basis. Modern science has actually begun to validate some of it. Saffron contains compounds, crocin, saffronol, and picrocrocin, that researchers today are studying for antidepressant and antioxidant properties. Ancient physicians didn't know the chemistry, but through centuries of trial, observation, and repetition, they had stumbled onto something real. By the time of ancient Persia, saffron cultivation had exploded into a full-scale industry. Persian texts from over 3,000 years ago describe fields of saffron crocus grown specifically for dye, perfume, and medicine. Persian warriors are said to have gone into battle with saffron threads woven into their tunics, believing it gave them strength and protection. And this is where saffron begins its long relationship with something else entirely: power. Because in the ancient world, saffron wasn't just useful, it was a color, and that color would prove almost as dangerous as it was beautiful. Here's something most people don't realize. For most of human history, saffron was valued less as a flavor and more as a dye. A single gram of saffron threads, when soaked in water, releases a deep, brilliant gold-orange color. A color so vivid, so difficult to replicate with any other natural substance, that it became instantly associated with royalty, divinity, and untouchable status. In ancient Persia, saffron-dyed fabric was reserved for royalty and high priests. In Buddhist tradition, saffron-orange robes became, and remain to this day, the symbol of monks who have renounced worldly life. Walk into any Buddhist monastery in Thailand, Myanmar, or Sri Lanka today, and you will see monks wearing robes dyed the exact same color that Bronze Age Greeks were harvesting from crocus flowers thousands of years ago. In ancient Rome, wealthy citizens scattered saffron threads across the floors of banquet halls and theaters, not to eat, but simply so that the scent would rise up as people walked, filling the room with fragrance. Roman emperors reportedly bathed in saffron-infused water. Streets were said to be sprinkled with saffron before the arrival of important dignitaries, turning entire roads gold and fragrant for a single procession. This was not a spice for ordinary people. This was a spice that announced power the moment it entered a room. And where there is that much value concentrated into something so small, so easy to counterfeit, something dark inevitably follows. By the Middle Ages, saffron had made its way across the Mediterranean and into Europe, and its price had climbed to levels that seem almost unbelievable today. And wherever there is a substance worth more than gold, by weight, there will always be people willing to fake it. Merchants began cutting saffron with cheaper substitutes: marigold petals, safflower, dyed silk fibers, even shredded meat soaked in dye. Anything that resembled the deep red-orange threads of the real thing. Buyers across Europe were being swindled constantly, and the economic damage became so severe that authorities had to act. In the German city of Nuremberg, this crisis escalated into something almost impossible to imagine today. It became known as the Saffron Shoe Code, a set of laws specifically created to police saffron fraud. And the punishments were brutal. Merchants caught adulterating saffron could be fined enormous sums, banished from the city, or, in the most severe cases recorded in historical accounts, burned alive alongside their fraudulent product, or buried alive with their counterfeit goods. Let that sink in. People were executed over fake saffron. This wasn't some minor spice scandal. This was a matter of serious civic law, enforced with the same severity as counterfeiting currency. Because in a very real economic sense, that's exactly what saffron fraud was. And saffron's value only continued climbing as it spread across the continent, arriving somewhere that would forever change its destiny. A quiet English town that would come to be named, quite literally, after the flower itself. In medieval England, in the county of Essex, there was a small market town that grew so intertwined with saffron cultivation that its name changed to reflect it. The town became known as Saffron Walden. According to local tradition, saffron crocus bulbs were smuggled into England by a pilgrim, hidden inside a hollowed-out walking staff, stolen from the Middle East, where its export was tightly controlled. Whether or not that specific story is entirely accurate, what we do know is that by the 1500s, Saffron Walden had become one of the most important centers of saffron cultivation in Europe. Its economy, built almost entirely around the harvest of this single flower. Fields stretching across the English countryside bloomed purple every autumn, and the town profited enormously from a trade so precious it justified, according to the legend, an act of agricultural theft. This detail matters because it reveals something essential about saffron's entire history. People didn't just want to buy it, they wanted to own the ability to grow it. Whoever controlled saffron cultivation controlled access to one of the most valuable commodities in the pre-modern world, and that desire for control would eventually collide with the age of empire and with an entirely new continent. As European powers began colonizing the Americas, they carried saffron with them. Spanish colonizers introduced saffron cultivation to parts of the Americas, though it never took root on a massive commercial scale the way it did back in the Old World. Meanwhile, in Europe itself, saffron cultivation was steadily narrowing down to just a handful of regions, where the climate, soil, and generations of accumulated expertise made it viable. And this is where the story arrives, at the region that still, to this day, dominates global saffron production, La Mancha, in central Spain. The rolling plains, made famous by Cervantes's Don Quixote, turned out to have exactly the right combination of dry summers, cold winters, and well-drained soil that the saffron crocus demands. Spanish saffron, particularly the variety known as Spanish Superior, or La Mancha saffron, became internationally renowned for its quality, and Spain, alongside Iran, emerged as one of the two great saffron powers of the modern world. But even as saffron trade routes stretched across oceans and continents, one fundamental truth about this spice never changed, and never will. No matter how advanced human technology became, no matter what machines we built to plant seeds, harvest wheat, pick cotton, or process sugar, saffron harvesting remained, and remains today, almost entirely a human, hand-done process. And to understand why, you need to understand exactly how brutal that harvest actually is. Here is the reason saffron costs what it costs. Here is the reason no shortcut has ever been found. The saffron crocus flowers for approximately 2 weeks each year, typically in autumn. Each flower blooms for one single day before wilting, and within that one day, in the very early hours of the morning, before the sun becomes strong enough to wilt the delicate petals, the flowers must be picked entirely by hand. Workers move through the fields at dawn, crouching low, picking each flower individually and placing it gently into baskets, racing against the rising sun. But picking the flower is only step one. Once harvested, each flower must then be pulled apart, by hand, to extract the 3 tiny crimson stigma threads from its center, a process requiring extraordinary patience and precision. A skilled worker might process only a few thousand flowers in an hour, and it takes somewhere in the range of 150,000 to 200,000 individual flowers just to produce a single kilogram of dried saffron threads. Then those delicate threads must be carefully dried, traditionally over gentle heat or in the sun, a process that, if done even slightly incorrectly, ruins the color, aroma, and value of the entire batch. No machine has ever successfully replicated this process at scale. The flowers are too delicate, the threads too small, the margin for damage too unforgiving. Attempts at mechanization have largely failed, meaning that even in the 21st century, with satellites orbiting the planet and robots performing surgery, saffron harvesting looks almost exactly the way it did in that Bronze Age fresco on the island of Santorini. Human hands, moving flower by flower, thread by thread. This is the actual reason for saffron's astronomical price. It isn't marketing. It isn't rarity for rarity's sake. It is pure, unavoidable, unmechanized human labor, compressed into a harvest window of just a few weeks each year. Today, Iran produces the overwhelming majority of the world's saffron, followed by regions in India, particularly the Kashmir Valley, where saffron cultivation has become deeply woven into local identity and economy, as well as Spain, Afghanistan, Greece, Morocco, and a small but growing number of producers elsewhere in the world. And remarkably, the ancient problem of saffron fraud has never actually disappeared. It has simply gone modern. Saffron remains one of the most counterfeited food products on the planet. Modern investigations have repeatedly uncovered saffron, adulterated with dyed corn silk, safflower petals, turmeric powder, and synthetic red dyes, the exact same category of fraud that got merchants executed in medieval Nuremberg, just updated for the 21st century marketplace. Laboratories today use chemical testing to detect these fakes, checking for the specific signature compounds, crocin, picrocrocin, and saffronol, that only genuine saffron contains. But the fact that this testing industry needs to exist at all tells you everything about how valuable and how tempting to fake this tiny red thread remains. In Afghanistan, saffron cultivation has even become part of an economic transformation story, promoted internationally as an alternative crop for farmers who might otherwise grow opium poppies, offering a legal, high-value harvest that can be sustained on the same land. And in Kashmir, saffron isn't just an export, it's identity. The Pampur region, sometimes called the Saffron Town of Kashmir, holds centuries of cultural memory tied to the same purple flowers that once bloomed in Bronze Age Greece. So after 4,000 years, through empires, executions, smuggling, medicine, religion, and war, what does saffron actually mean today? Think about everything this single flower has touched. It colored the robes of monks and the ceremonial carpets of Persian kings. It scented the banquet halls of Rome and gave a small English town its name. It was worth enough to justify smuggling, worth enough to justify fraud, and worth enough that entire legal codes were written just to punish people who dared to fake it. And through every single one of those 4,000 years, the harvest never changed. No empire, no war, no scientific revolution ever found a way around it. Because saffron cannot be mass-produced. It cannot be synthesized to match its true chemistry. It cannot even reproduce without human hands intervening generation after generation. It survives only because, since the Bronze Age, someone somewhere has always been willing to wake before dawn, walk into a field of purple flowers, and gently, patiently, pick them one by one. That is why saffron is priceless, not because someone decided to make it seem valuable, because it demands, quite literally, a piece of human time and human care that cannot be replaced by anything else on Earth. And for 4,000 years, through Bronze Age Crete, Persian palaces, Roman banquets, medieval executions, English fields, and Kashmiri valleys, that demand has never once been refused. The flower blooms for one day. Humanity has shown up for 4,000 years.